In the 6th century BCE, the Indian subcontinent was a fragmented landscape. It was composed of dozens of small, fiercely competitive kingdoms and republics known as Mahajanapadas, independent territories with their own local rulers and assemblies, locked in a constant struggle for dominance. Rulers aimed for control that extended far beyond their immediate neighbors. Territorial expansion brought in immense wealth, secured access to crucial raw materials, and earned the ultimate prestige, the title of King of Kings. This ambition led towards imperium, a Latin word meaning supreme power. Building an empire required the subjugation of vastly different lands, peoples, and cultures, binding them all together under a single central authority. Of all these competing states, one kingdom successfully broke away from the pack to achieve that massive scale: Magadha. Magadha possessed three distinct strategic pillars. First, the fertile plains of the Ganges River provided massive food surpluses. Second, the deep forests supplied timber and wild elephants for the military. And third, they held critical access to rich deposits of iron ore. Iron-forged weapons and surplus agricultural wealth provided the essential fuel to transition this localized kingdom into an unstoppable expansionist machine. Pushing borders outward required brute force. An ambitious king first needed a massive standing army to conquer neighboring lands and built heavy fortified settlements at the edges of the territory to project physical power. However, emperors often allowed local kings to keep their thrones as tributaries. They maintained local authority, but were forced to regularly pay the emperor in gold, grain, or livestock, representing their submission. Extracting tribute from distant edges and funneling raw resources into a central capital required immense logistics. The capital acts as a pump, distributing resources outward along trade routes, like the Uttarapatha and Dakshinapatha, to pay for administration and soldiers. To make trade across these vast distances function, the central government standardized laws, weights, and measures. These symbols on a silver punch-marked coin are physical evidence of an empire issuing its own currency, ensuring seamless trade from north to south. Military might is required to conquer a territory, but standardized economic and administrative systems are the only way to actually hold it together. Military conquest is inherently violent, and the resentment it breeds runs deep. Attempting to permanently suppress millions of diverse people using only brute force is a logistical impossibility. Rulers like Ashoka utilized cultural unification instead. He promoted peaceful philosophies like Dhamma, carving unifying imperial decrees into the landscape's bedrock. Alongside these inscriptions, the state sponsored monumental architecture to project a shared religious and cultural identity. The Great Stupa at Sanchi is a premier example. This massive dome and ornate gateways were designed to inspire awe and shared peace among subjects. This creates a paradox of statecraft. A massive empire forged through warfare ultimately required vast monuments of peace to prevent its own citizens from rebelling. At its zenith, the empire was anchored by global metropolises like Pataliputra, as seen in this artistic representation. It was a wealthy center of trade, drawing in silk from China and southern spices. But the larger and wealthier an empire becomes, the more fragile it grows. Vast borders demand larger armies, which in turn demand higher taxes. This creates a negative feedback loop where heavy taxation inevitably breeds local resentment and uprising. The limits of expansion were famously reached during Alexander the Great's campaign in India. After years of conquest, his overextended and exhausted army reached the edge of the subcontinent and simply refused to go further. This is the entropy of empire. The exact systems required to build and defend these states, massive militaries and heavy taxation, eventually tear them apart from the inside. While all ancient physical empires ultimately collapsed back into smaller states, the systems they introduced did not die with them. The invisible architecture, administrative blueprints, standardized trade routes, and centralized taxation became permanent fixtures of the region's governance for centuries to come. Cultural symbols of these ancient emperors also survived as markers of a unified identity, such as the polished stone lion capital of Ashoka from Sarnath. This ancient artifact is the direct ancestor of modern identity, serving today as the official state emblem of India. The physical empires eventually crumbled, but by merging these distant kingdoms, their rulers established the political and cultural structures that underpin much of the subcontinent's organization today.